let's say October 1996, you started Creative Breaks, which was your first business within the event industry, which is 30 years ago this year. Congratulations. Um, you've obviously had multiple businesses since then and been employed, been part of a consultancy. What are some of the memories that really jump out over the last 30 years?
Well, for a start, I'm slightly sort of gobsmacked and a bit depressed that it's been 30 years since I started my first business. Actually, it really wasn't my first business. I mean, going back to I think 1988 or 89, had a sandwich business called Tung Sani, which was a disaster. But yeah, Creative Breaks was the first time, I ventured into the world of actually properly running a business. How's the industry changed? It's a good question. I think essentially, fundamentally, it hasn't changed, apart from the fact that everything is so immediate now. I mean, back when we first started, Giles Toosey and myself, we didn't have at least I'm pretty sure we didn't have an email address. Only one of us had a mobile. And therefore, when you were asked for a quote by a client, they weren't expecting it back within an hour. They were expecting it back within a week. So I think that's changed an awful lot. Probably for the better, but also it puts much more pressure and stress on people who are trying to work with clients and make sure that they are able to deal with the immediacy of what everyone wants.
Yes, completely. And then what was interesting is, a decade or close to a decade ago, you moved from, I mean, you're still in the events industry, very much so, but you ran events businesses, you were part of events companies, and then moved into consultancy to events. What do you remember that decision and why that felt like the right move?
It's again, yeah. What I was 10 years ago, so I was 48 years old. I just sold Pubs on Wheels, which in itself was a bit of a coup because I loved that business, but it was just impossible to make money in it because the trucks were too expensive to move about. But they were great, and sadly I've never of course seen one of the trucks since. But it was a sort of moment where not necessarily a question of, well, what the hell do I do next? It was, Mike Kershaw was my non-executive chairman at the time, and in a very Mike way, he said, let's do some consultancy. I've got a couple of clients. We'll get you a couple of clients. It'll all be fantastic. And I kind of thought, well, okay, that sounds right. And I think before I knew it, I'd fallen into the consultancy role, and I think I've really enjoyed it because I think everyone, I mean, pretty much every single one of my clients, and certainly I think it applies to everyone, has incredible imposter syndrome, whatever they're doing. And I think I thought, well, I haven't exactly knocked the lights out being an entrepreneur. How can I give proper advice to people who are setting out on their journey and of running their own business? But actually, and I've thought this all through my life. I'm forever surprised by how much you do actually know, or how many people you do actually know, and how you're able to join the dots between companies and people and help. So I think it became quite a natural thing. It hasn't been a completely smooth 10 years by any stretch of the imagination, and there were moments when inevitably I doubted myself. But with the help of Mike and in particular Richard, who was Richard Dean, who came from an IMG background, and obviously when I was working for the European Tour and Ryder Cup, we worked very closely with IMG, so I knew what that kind of methodology and the thinking behind everything they did. So he was a great help, and he's a very logical man, and so I think as a three ball, it became we were very complementary to one another.
I think that's very true of. It's very difficult to get partnerships right. I think most would admit that. But I think what's great about the three of you, is you have strengths in different areas. It's not three of the same person.
Definitely not.
And so there's challenges in that, but there's great upside in, you're never going to come up with the same thing as Richard and Mike, and vice versa. They're always going to see it differently, which is both challenging and exciting.
Yeah.
But it's a great thing. And coming back to the imposter syndrome, I'm the first to admit that myself. Whenever we work with larger and larger consultancy firms, and every time they're just a little bit bigger than the last, I go, okay, maybe I wonder if I still know what I'm doing. And then they describe what's going on, and you go, oh, it's just this. So is that your experience? Is that actually?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it really is exactly my experience. I remember when Giles and I started Creative Breaks, as you say, 30 years ago. I thought, well, I have no clue how to run a business. I mean, literally no clue.
Yeah.
And Giles again was incredibly bright guy, unbelievable. I mean, just like systems and processes and even from most things were done on an Excel spreadsheet, but we were very, very systemized. And by the time we merged that business into Quintus Events in, say, 2001 maybe, what we both realized that by accident or by design, we running a 2-man or 3 or 4-man business as Creative Breaks became, there's no difference in that to helping run with Quintus Events. I mean, what were we, 20, 25 people, and that's what I was really surprised by that, because as long as you put all the right bits in place, things will be okay. Yes, obviously in a small business, over reliant on the founders, but if you put the foundations in place, at least you give yourself a better than even chance of making a success of it.
Yeah. And an interesting thing about yourselves and you is you've had over 100 clients, which is credit to the three of you, in the last decade. But the events industry, for the consultants listening, the events industry has a lot of variety. Within events, there's a lot of different types of businesses. It's everything from, you would include a DJ right up to a production company and a
100%.
AV studio, and just everything in between. So it's all these different businesses that fall under the umbrella of events. But you've been able to repeat your expertise into, you've been able to service it 100 plus times now. Now, I'm curious about the things that you see in every company. Like, from 100 repetitions, what are the challenges and problems and upsides do you see most often?
Well, I think the most obvious one, and it applies to every SME. It doesn't matter whether it's in the events industry or not, but it's the founders being stuck in the weeds, basically.
Mm.
And I think it takes a long time and a lot of revenue to get beyond that, and to trust, for a founder to trust the people around him or her to do the jobs that they're meant to be doing. And I think we always say, and it's not always possible, but we always say that at the head of a business, your founder, who's the kind of the visionary, and it's his idea. But then underneath that you have your sales and marketing function, or sales and marketing function, your ops function, and your HR admin function, and you have to have all those bits in place to function as a business. Now, obviously, when you're small, you double up those bits. But I was speaking to a guy the other day who we're just going to start working with, hopefully in a month or so. Great little interesting bar business, and he's essentially just one of him, or he's just employed a second guy. And I wanted to say to him, okay, you've got the second guy aboard. You've got to have a differentiation between you and him. You can't both be doing the same job, otherwise you're just going to be running around in circles, which is absolutely pointless. So I think being stuck in the weeds and trusting people are the two things that founders find most difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But even more fundamental than that, very, very few people have a plan.
Mm.
I don't know, it's easy to say, but you'll go and say, where do you want to be in a year's time? When they'll go, or where do you want to be in 5 years' time? And they say, I would like to turn over 5 million quid. And you say, well, okay, you're turning over 250 grand now, so it feels a little bit unlikely that you're going to get to 5 million quid. So let's make a plan that does feel realistic. Mm-hmm. And I think as soon as you do that, the journey becomes, a lot easier for them to picture.
Yeah.
And I think that's the fundamental thing that Kosher Partners have done in the last 10 years is devise a system or a series of systems which allows us to say, right, okay, this is the journey you're on. Mm-hmm. These are all the things you need to do along that journey. Mm-hmm. And if you do all this stuff, clearly the goals will change. It's not a straight line, clearly, but as long as you follow along what we're saying, and it doesn't have to be with us, but we'll help you in the first instance, then you'll get to that. You will get to that goal, because you kind of have to, because you're going to put all the right bits in place. And as long as the product or service you've got is fundamentally good and people want it and you understand why they want it, then you'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great answer. And you are, one of the strengths of what you guys do is that you've been able to productize advisory into, initially, you have your 2-day diagnostic review, which is ever evolving as a service, but it is a very easy thing for clients to buy.
Yeah, I think that's very true. When when I say it's 2-day diagnostic, it probably really is a 1-day diagnostic now with the follow up. But I think that's right, and that yes, that has undoubtedly evolved from where it first started. But as you say, it's if I say to any small business owner, okay, we're going to come in and with the benefit of our experience and expertise, we're going to just strip back everything. Just give us a day. We're going to strip back everything. We're going to find out everything, and then we can give you what we found, what conclusions are, and what the recommendations we would make going forward. Now, we're never going to put anyone under any pressure to say you have to do that with us, because what we're giving them essentially is a roadmap to say, well, certainly for the first 6 months, and then for the first 12 months, and then 3 years and 5 years and so on. And it's interesting, I was speaking to a guy who has a really, really successful production business, and he said, you've been down to see me today and you've seen everything. I don't really need to do the review. And I said, well, we kind of do, because I can guess at what's going on here. I don't care how successful you are, but if I'm only guessing what's going on here, I'm just going to uncover a whole lot of more stuff as we go forward. Yes. So I've got to know what I'm dealing with at the outset. And it doesn't matter whether you're turning over £500,000 or in this guy's case, probably 6 or 7 million quid. The same principles apply. I have to find out what's going on before we go forward.
Well, your advice thereafter is going to be solid or exceptional based on, is it addressing the real problems within the business? So the diagnostic starting point, I think, is key. But I wanted to ask about you as a business. What was life like? Because a lot of consultancy leaders understand the idea of, we need to productize what we do. We need a front-end offering that is easy to buy, and you've done it really successfully. So what was the business like to run prior to a formalized diagnostic process, and what is it like since? What's the before and after?
Well, I think before it was hand to mouth. I'm sure many consultants have done exactly the same thing. They start off as a 1 or 2 man band, and it's literally, let's see if we can get as many clients as possible, as much money as we can. Which, of course, it's not disastrous, but it's not sustainable, because that you go through that boom and bust cycle, which all consultants and all businesses have been through, but particularly consultancy, you inevitably have boom bust cycle, which is hopeless. But I think from our point of view, I mean, it's 100% credit to Richard, and I suspect it's his IMG background which helped him to devise the 2-day review. But it's such a simple thing, and as you say, it's so easy to buy, that post has been so much easier, because we're essentially selling one thing, and that's it. I mean, obviously we're selling the ongoing advisory and ongoing consultancy, but the starting point has to be the review. And going back to I was just saying about this chap I met the other day, he said, I want to skip the review and go to stage 2. And I'm going, well, no, it's just not possible to skip the review. You just have to do that first.
And we work with enough consultancies to know that when they have an initial diagnostic review, their conviction in the diagnostic review gets challenged constantly by people trying to buy the longer term thing. Like, I get that, our clients get that. Why can't I just skip to the result?
Yeah.
Can I not just do the big thing? And what do you say to clients? So there's a consultancy listening to this going, great, we'll do it. A diagnostic review is our first offering. And then they get the pushback, the objections saying, can I just skip? What do you say to your clients to reinforce conviction that it's necessary?
Because of what I said before, is that what I don't want to do is to start an advisory and 3 months down the road uncover something which
Right.
which no one knew was there, and then you're slightly back to square one. Whereas if you start with the open book, you know exactly, I mean, essentially the review boils down to doing a SWOT analysis, really, and then writing a list of issues that the business, short-term issues that the business, well, short and long-term issues that the business has. In our view, and we always say to people, okay, the weaknesses and therefore the issues you've got in the business, there isn't a single one of them that we haven't seen before, or any consultant hasn't seen before. But it's addressing them, knowing what they are and how to deal with them, which is the absolute key. Is if you come across, the other thing that's very difficult is that owners and founders of business really fundamentally struggle with diagnosing issues in their business. And that's not a criticism, it's just a fact of life. It's very difficult to do. And I think with the way that we've structured it is to say, we're like the doctor. You may think that you have a problem with, I don't know, with your ops director or ops manager who's an absolute pain in the arse or not doing his job properly or whatever it might be. And we might say, okay, well, that's fine. But the problem may not be the ops manager or the ops director. The problem may be up the chain of command somewhere. And I was actually listening to someone exactly this problem the other day who was saying, it was in the catering business and they were making the point that that they had an issue with one of the people within the business. And we were pretty sure that the issue didn't lie there, it lay further up the chain of command. And sure enough, it did lie up the chain of command. And that this person, the ops person, who was identified as a problem, actually, it was the MD of the business that was the problem, and was upsetting clients. And this guy was running around firefighting underneath him. But we wouldn't have known that had we not gone through the whole process to start with.
I firsthand, I see that more and more the bigger a consultancy gets, where very intelligent people, very switched on, very capable, will think, right, we are this size, we want to get to this size, we think this is our big constraint to get there, so we're going to fix this, we're going to focus on this. And often it's, we're also going to fix this, and we're also going to fix this, and we're also going to fix this. And what ends up happening is they work really hard solving problems within the business, quite often successfully, and don't grow. And it's often because that was never a constraint. It was never the thing that was going to make a difference. So I think it's key. And as well as the 2-day review or the 1-day review as it evolves, you've got your pillars of growth. So I wanted to just talk about those because they're directly transferable to a consultancy. So you've got the big idea, living the dream, tools of the trade, catching fish, running on rails, and pot of gold. So to go through those a little bit. So big idea, what is that? What does that mean?
Well, as exactly as it sounds, it's okay. What's the plan? What's the plan? What do you want to achieve, both personally and for the business? And I think a lot of people get completely transfixed on what they want for the business and how important it is that the business does this and turns over this and makes this look like. But it's just as important is what does that look like for you? If you've got a family, if you've got kids, if you've got a mortgage, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? So I think that's really, really important to work out what the plan is, because once you've got the plan, at least you've got an idea of where to start making the roadmap.
That's great. And living the dream?
Well, living the dream is what's happening in the business right now. So are you actually living the dream? Is the sort of, it's the question rather than the statement, I suppose. It is, have you got the right people in the right place? Have you got systems and processes that allow you to do stuff properly? It's mostly people, I think, more than anything else. Have you got the right people around you to keep you on track, to keep you on that journey moving forward?
Tools of the trade?
Well, tools of the trade, we've combined now tools of the trade with running on rails. A long time ago, we were involved with a chap called Steve Hackney who ran a business called Core Asset. And he said, that every single business you should behave like a franchise. I.e., you get to a point where you're literally running on rails, but you have the systems and processes, everything. So the tools of the trade are all good. So you have the right office spaces, you have the right IT, you have the right vehicles and equipment. You running on rails, you have the right people. You got systems and processes that mean that you, as the owner and founder of the business, you're not down in the weeds all the time. And so that's kind of franchise thinking. And obviously, the best franchise in the world is probably McDonald's. You know, that is, I'm not suggesting that every small events business should be a McDonald's, but the same process, it's that mindset which will help you say, okay, if I do this and it works, I've just got to repeat that and it'll keep on working.
I think that's great. I think a lot of consultancies would endeavour to and would often benefit from that McDonald's approach. I think a lot of us have seen that movie, The Founder, where they
Absolutely, yeah.
walk through, this is the step by step of how you create this meal again and again, that repetition.
Yeah.
And it's exactly why if you go to Prague or Florida or
it's exactly the same.
Hong Kong, it's the same burger.
Yeah.
A little bit more complicated when it comes to people, businesses, and consultancies, but the pathway is worth pursuing.
Yeah, but I agree with you, because it's obviously the people in consultancy business become more fundamental to the business rather than someone who's flipping burgers. No disrespect to anyone who flips a burger, but as long as they're working with the right tools, you know, and as long as they're on the same path, you know, the many times when we're speaking to people, you know, we had a wonderful client 2 or 3 years ago who refused to share the figures of the business with her ops director, basically her number 2, because she thought that if she shared the details, then the ops director would ask for a pay rise, which probably he would have done. But it was a classic example of if the ops director is not on the bus, then he doesn't know the direction of travel. So you've got to, the fundamental, and with consultancies, everyone's got to know what the direction of travel is.
Yeah.
Because as soon as that, you know, as a founder, as soon as you see that people are not on the bus or not coming on the journey with you, then they're probably surplus to requirements to your business.
Well said. Catching fish?
Well, that's sales and marketing, fundamentally. It's my absolute favourite subject. You know, I think that I always say to people, fall in love with your ideal client, don't fall in love with your product or service. And so many people are just saying, we're offering the best thing in the whole world and people should buy. I mean, I was very much with Pubs on Wheels. That was exactly 100% me. I knew this was the most beautiful made bit of kit, wonderful, look great, enhance any party, festival, blah, blah, blah. Sure as no one wanted to buy it. Yeah. And what I didn't do was put myself in the shoes of my ideal client and say, okay, what do I really need? It's much easier now with Commercial Partners because we know our clients need help, but what do they actually need help with? And identifying that and saying, okay, this is the review will help answer all these questions which we know you have.
Yes.
So you do it, and it's, you know, you'll find out lots of answers which you didn't know beforehand.
Well, I mean, your 2-day diagnostic review becoming a 1-day in person is an example of that. You know, that is...
Yeah, 2 days was tough.
Yeah, 2 days of their time because we're going to go deeper and we're going to do X, Y, Z, and there's all benefits to it. But actually, if you're consultancy selling time, then 2 days is better than 1 day.
Yeah.
But if you're focused on the client and you focus on the benefit of them and actually respecting their time and all the things that come along with it, it's not just the money they've spent, it's 2 days out of the business. 1 day is better than 2.
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that's a good example of pursuit of excellence in the direction of how do we help our clients more.
Yeah.
And then pot of gold?
Pot of gold is what does the exit look like? Now, the exit, I mean, not everyone wants an exit, clearly. Some people want to run their businesses as, as a lifestyle thing and to keep it going for as long as possible, which is fine. But ultimately, whether you want to grow a business or exit a business down the line, the fundamentals are still the same. You have to get everything in place for that to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But when presented with an option to exit, I think people go, okay, well, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to come on to HIPPO events down the line. But it's so important to understand that you have options. And I think people who are running small businesses think, well, I'm never going to sell this. The business is far too small to sell. and that may well be true. I mean, it's very difficult to sell a business which is turning over 2-3 million quid because no one's going to write you a check for any decent amount of money, and therefore, I mean, there's lots of ways to skin that particular cat, but you're not going to get rich. But what you don't want to do is to run a business for 25, 30 years, and then for it just to come to a grinding halt when you do.
Well, you and I will have seen it where the alternative, you build a business, you get to a stage where you need to consider exit because you just don't want to do what you're doing anymore. You're done. Time to not do what you've done for 30 years. And the choice is either wind down or take this step towards systemized growth. And I think like you say, and I remember when you first said this to me, whenever it was, beyond a year, is the process of selling a business and growing a business efficiently should be the same. The steps you have to take to get a business ready are beneficial regardless of whether you sell.
Yeah.
So huge stuff. And I think a lot of consultancies that have gone through that they're taking on investment or they're looking to de-risk and remove the founder from the sales process. I think if they go through that exercise, they realize that quickly.
Yeah, I think it's dead right. Yeah, and it is fundamentally it's removing all the responsibility from the founder, and it's very difficult to do if you're the founder.
Yeah.
But once you understand why it's so important, it becomes a much easier explanation for them.
And part of that process is also systems and process, and part of it is the psychology of the founder. That's always the challenge.
Yeah.
They go. There's often a point where they could step back, and they just haven't chosen to, and that's often.
Yeah, that's often frustrating. When you have a founder who's actually got a really good team in place, and you're saying, okay, you got a really good team in place. This is beginning to run on rails. You just don't need to just stay out of the way.
Take a month off.
Yeah. Just because let's just see how this does actually run.
So we've covered a lot of ground, but bringing all the 30 years together a little bit and the last decade especially. So we've covered a lot of ground and we've talked about the last 30 years of your career. What's one moment or memory that still kind of haunts you and it feels like your biggest failure?
So yeah, there's one that stands out above all others, which has to be the 2006 Gala Dinner, Ryder Cup Gala Dinner, which was, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. I mean, the story is too long to go into here, but there's always the great saying in events that there's those people who know Van Morrison and those people who have met him, and I've met him, and suffice to say, yeah, I wouldn't want to meet him again. I took a view that I could take on this event and do it in a way which was novel and new, and I couldn't, fundamentally.
Yeah.
And it'll be long remembered by people who attended and people who worked on the event, and I can't think of any particularly good reasons.
Yes.
I mean, it's one of those things. You say, well, you look back and you'll laugh about it later. Still not.
No.
Still not. 20 years later.
Well, from doing all these podcast episodes, I think there's always one story that comes really quickly to people's mind when you ask that question. They go, I know I'm supposed to laugh about it, and yes, there was lessons learned, but I still wake up at 3 a.m.
Yeah,
with the shakes, and I'm back there.
I don't do that anymore. I did for a long time though. It was just because you couldn't believe that an event could go that badly wrong. I guess it's like all this. There were so many moving parts, and dealing with technology, which was really substandard, made it very difficult anyway. But me trying to be clever exacerbated all the problems that were there, and therefore, yeah, it was disaster. But suffice it to say that obviously Europe run that Ryder Cup, so it can't have been all bad. But I did also organise the opening ceremony the following day, and that was a huge success. What you lose on the swings, you gain on the roundabouts, I suppose.
Silver lining.
Yeah.
And the other side of the coin, or when you think back over the last 30 years, what would be your proudest moment?
Well, I think one of my proudest moments as a consultant certainly is working with Steve Catling at Hippo events. When we came across Steve, probably less than 2 years ago now, he was one man band working literally every hour that God sent him. And here we are, 2 months, yeah, let's go 2 years later, and his business turnover has doubled. He's now got 5, 6 people on the books. It's just one of those people who listen. Do you know what I mean? And so going back to where we started about having imposter syndrome and saying to people, you should follow these, follow what I'm saying. Do what I say, not what I do, and it'll work out fine. And he literally took it as gospel. And it gave, I think more than anything, it gave me an awful lot of faith in our own system, because it clearly worked.
Mm-hmm.
But it also gave him a lot of faith. And he's they're all businesses struggle, but he's never panicked. He's never worried about it. He understands the need now for him to step into a slightly different role going forward. And I'm so excited for him in the future. I think he's an amazing guy, unbelievable work ethic, unbelievably nice with it. Has a not a unique product. He's a conference company, so it's not hardly a unique product. But he just works very hard at it and makes sure that his clients really, are really loyal to him.
And when you think about working with more clients like that in the future, what's the feeling or thought?
Yeah, well, I think it's very different. It's very difficult. I'm a person who really hates big egos. I mean, I really, really dislike people with big egos. Not least because they're impossible to work with, and therefore, when you come across someone who you instantly hit it off with, and you're pretty sure that they're not egotistical, then that's a great person to work with. It's the person who, and it's only really happened once. We came across a business that the owner founder just had, the most enormous ego, and despite telling them that, in order to achieve what they wanted to do, which was to sell the business, that they had to take a step back, and that they had to employ a general manager or an MD or just someone to do the day-to-day without them being involved in every single thing. They said, okay, fine, we'll do that. Well, that's what I promised we're going to do that. 2 weeks in, I'm not even 2 weeks in, it was clearly obvious that wasn't going to happen. And we battled on probably for 2 months, and then just said, look, we just can't do this. It's not possible to deal with that.
Yes.
So and I would always say to anyone, whether it's in your own business or not, avoid egos, because egos are very dangerous to a business. And if you're a consultant, avoid people with egos at all costs, because it will not end well.
Well, completely aligned with that. And I think one of our joint favorite subjects is sales marketing. And years ago, people used to ask ourselves for more leads. And that used to be the ask, how do we get more leads, more clients? And then we used to deliver on that. And then actually it didn't necessarily grow the business because of other reasons. And I think I learned that, so it's more complicated than just opportunities in the top equals growth in the bottom.
Yeah, but that's what everyone wants to say. The first thing people say, I just need more business.
Yeah.
Well, okay, fine. But if you get more business, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Are you going to be able to service that business? Have you got people in the business to service that increased number? And so often the answers are no.
Yeah.
That as you say, lead generation is part of it, but it's not all of it.
Yes. I think credit to you and yourselves, where from a couple of things that you do really well is, you especially are very grounded in your approach, but I think it's that pragmatism or grounding that goes, yes, but what are we doing? Like, what is in the devil's in the detail here. The diagnostic reviews are a reflection on that. Let's actually look at what's going on. Let's not just run fast, and let's pause and think. And I think the balance of yourself and Richard especially, move in that direction. I think it's been nothing but credit to you.
Yeah, we've grown the business. We're very nicely stable business now, and it feels like there's, we're not necessarily getting any younger, sadly, but I think there's an opportunity for me, particularly because I'm the youngest of the three, to grow this going forward. And I'm really excited about that, because I think, again, going back to the very beginning here, if you've got the systems and processes and things that you do that work, and you know that the clients want, bringing someone else to the business and saying, look, okay, this kind of stuff works. Just follow this; it'll all be fine. Works. And don't try and reinvent the wheel. We've invented this wheel. The wheel works. Just leave it at that.